So this is going to be a very interesting video. I just received the book Unit 731, Cover Up the Operation Paperclip of the East. And I was reading in the first part. By the way, we are in Amsterdam and we're going to discuss it while I'm walking. But first I need to read this for you. I already mentioned it in other videos, but just a refresher can't hurt, right? So here it says, by the 1920s, nationalism and militaristic politics had soared to an all-time high in Japan. Beginning with the Russo-Japanese War, Japan had adopted the moniker the Empire of Japan and began to conduct itself as an imperialist colonial empire in East Asia, faced with economic hardships and a lack of sufficient materials during the 1920s and 1930s, Japan needed to import raw materials such as iron, rubber, and oil to maintain strong economic growth. The Japanese felt that acquiring resource-rich territories would establish economic self-sufficiency and independence, and Japan as an island nation had limited resources. As a result, Japan set its sight on East Asia, specifically Manchuria, with its many resources, but also China and the Soviet Russia's Far East. Many nationalistic and militaristic Japanese figures, however, believe that the newly formed Soviet Union and rise of communism were the greatest threats to Japan's complete colonization of and influence in East Asia. And this is quite important, and we're going to discuss it right now. And after that long introduction, we are walking through Amsterdam, and this is your favorite half Chinese. And it is very important to understand that part. And I mentioned it also in other videos, because today, when we look at it, we are exactly at the same crossroads, I would say. Japan's economy is dwindling down, and so is the United States. And that is why we can clearly see that the United States is making advances, right? They're trying to get their hands on the oil of Venezuela. They're trying to get their hands on Greenland because of the resources. And that is why they are doing it. They're not doing it out of compassion for the people who are living there or national security. Well, you could make an argument of national security because, you know, they have a large debt to pay. 38 trillion it is now, I believe. And how are you going to pay it when you have nothing to offer to the world, since they have financialized their own economy and thus have shipped their manufacturing overseas? And that is basically where they are at right now. So how are you going to make all that money? Because there's no real economy left in the United States. Because if we look at it, then what you see is like 2/3 of their economy, what they show is their economy, is based upon the financial market. The financial market isn't a real economy. Real economy is things like this. Shops, right? Shops. They're selling goods. It's they're creating something, right? And they're giving some value for your money. That is what a real economy looks like. A real economy is not a financial market. It's not the boys from Wall Street. They are actually sucking down, sucking the economy, the real economy, empty. Because most of the money is going to the shareholders and not to the people who are actually producing and editing or adding to the economy, adding value to the economy, I should say. And when it comes to Japan, we now also see similarities as back then, right? Oh, look at this. I don't know if anybody have ever seen this. This is nice, right? Whoop, look, this is how it looks. Japan is having the exact same attitude right now, while they're blaming the others, right? You see them militarizing around China, and then they're accusing China of being a threat to them. But how, in what possible way is China a threat to Japan? It never actually, never in its entire history attacked Japan. We cannot say the same thing from Japan. They have a long, long history attacking China for especially these specific reasons that I mentioned before that were stated in this book. So we must think about these kind of things. Who is really, really a threat? And I understand that many people in the West are having their beautiful minds propagandized by, oh, Japan is really, really peaceful and they're so cultured, etc., etc. While most of their culture, mind you, comes from China. But yeah, cultural appropriation is always okay when we are appropriating the culture of China, while at the same time demonizing everything from China. But that's for something else. When we look at Japan and Germany, for example, because I know some people will say, oh, why do you keep talking about these things? Get over it already. Well, a lot of times the people are taking an argument from Germany and then they will say, look, nobody is talking about Germany like that, etc., etc. Right? But there's a difference. Today, I was actually helping my friend who was born in Germany and went to school there. And in their school, they have been taught extensively what they did wrong. Extensively. And unfortunately, we cannot say that from the Japanese. And we can also say from Germany that they have extensively showed remorse and regret for what they have done during World War II. While at the same time, Japan has never done that, and actually is even still praying for their war criminals. And that's insane. They have shrines where they go and pay tribute to them. So there's nothing like it that shows that they have any sort of remorse. And then we have the Takaishi comments. So the situation is totally different if Germany would have acted in a way like the Japanese. So another thing was, remember what happened in Nanjing? I'm not going to say that word before, or sometimes it is called with a word after, because I want to keep the video good for the algorithm. But you can look it up. And what happened in Unit 731, what the book is about. Those were the most heinous crimes humans can imagine. In fact, I always say humans cannot imagine such crimes. It is so horrific. And the victims of Nanjing actually always wanted to have justice. And they were actively fought against by the Japanese government and by the Japanese people. So the situation is totally different. Just think of if the Jews would like to have justice from Germany for what they have done to them in the World War II, and then the government of Germany is going to actively attack them, those exact same victims that were victimized by them. Nobody would accept that. So I think when it comes to the Chinese people, we also should not have, accept that. I mean, all humans should be equal, and therefore we should not accept it for one case and not for another case. So when you come to that case and you say that, oh yeah, these things we forgive one but we don't forgive another, is because these two cases are totally different. One is remorseful and the other is not. And that is why we can take this history, and when we look at it, and we can assume, and we should assume, that history is about to repeat itself again. China has never showed any aggression towards Japan, so it can never be a threat to Japan. One sometimes makes arguments that they are rebuilding their army, but one must also understand that there's a history behind it. Nothing exists on its own. Everything has a history. So the history behind it is that China has been invaded by many, many countries, and normally it is named the Century of Humiliation. And now these exact same countries, minus Russia, are encircling China yet again, militarizing, putting up military bases, military alliances, all to attack China. So what do you expect them to do? Just sit there as a lame duck and wait for them to be attacked? And then, you know, when atrocities happen, they will be blamed for having a weak army, just like many people have blamed them for having a weak army during World War II. They should have had a stronger army, or during the Japanese occupation. I mean, or when the Eighth Alliance came, invaded China, or when the two Opium Wars, when England and the Brits and the French were invading China. Yeah, you should have a stronger army, so it's your fault. Many times I've heard this explanation, which is just ridiculous. Like, when a country has a weak army, you need to feel compelled to invade them and commit so many atrocities on their people. That's such a ridiculous statement. But that statement you can now also use for the people. This is the exact reason why they want to have a strong military, but it is still nowhere near what is the budget of the United States. So to say that it is a threat, that's just ridiculous. To say that they are building up their army to start to become imperialistic is insane, because 80% of their army is not offensive but defensive. It is totally based upon defense. They don't even have the capability to come to Europe to fight a war, or go to the United States to fight a war. So those statements are ridiculous and are easily to be refuted. On the other hand, however, unfortunately, we cannot say the same thing. So there you go. Anyway, I wanted to leave it at this. I hope that people will have a little bit of a brighter mind about how these things come about, and why we need to study this history, and also have enjoyed a little bit of the view, although you saw a lot of my ugly face. Let me just show you these. This is what Amsterdam is famous for. This is going through the entire cities, all around the center, or what Americans would call downtown. You have these canals. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope it was a great lesson. Many people always ask me about history things, so I thought I took this opportunity, because I just opened the book and I said, yeah, this is worth to make a video about. Also, I want to say, I have a buy me a coffee for the people who like to support my work. I only my wish is, dearly, if you do not have real enough money, then please do not donate, but give me a like and a share and follow me. Instead, you will make me just as happy. And for the other ones who want to buy me a coffee, thank you. I will keep on editing while I'm sipping your very tasteful coffee. And I leave it at that, live from Amsterdam. This was your favorite half Chinese, and as always, have a great day.